Welcome to Living from the Soul. This is your host, Sam Torode, and today I'm excited to talk with Trevor Clark. Trevor is an expert on plants and herbal medicines. He studied at Bestir University in Washington and is now an adjunct faculty member there. He's the owner of Clark's Herbal Remedies, which makes a CBD pain cream. And he also consults with individuals, helping people to find natural solutions for their physical problems. He's also worked as a plant scientist for several startup companies. I once heard someone say, "I wish I were as passionate about anything as Trevor is about plants." So I want to start there and ask, where did that passion begin? Did you have an interest in plants when you were a child, or did it come later in life?
Well, I was not raised around natural health or herbs, and I didn't really know much about herbal medicines or anything like that. It wasn't until I broke my spine in a car accident, and after I had a spinal fusion, I woke up with a chronic pain condition called fibromyalgia and neuropathy, and my arms and legs were numb and on fire. So yes, it kind of began there. That was the start of it.
How old were you when you had the accident?
So I was in a car accident at, 17 years old. It was right at the end of high school, and a vehicle hit mine. They were going maybe about 60 or 70 and just destroyed my car. I was sitting still. And broke my spine.
And then what happened from there? How did plants come into the picture?
Yeah, so I spent about 4 years basically in bed. I could walk with a cane, but I was just in horrifying pain. I was on 11 different medications for pain. My my adrenal system was shutting down, so they put me on medicines to keep me awake and then to put me to sleep. And then my hormone levels bottomed out, and my thyroid bottomed out. So I was on all kinds of medication. And a doctor I had, he was a head rheumatologist at a pretty big hospital. He told me that I was going to start having liver issues and could potentially die in 10, 15 years from all those medications. But he said that they didn't know what else to do other than to keep giving me the medications, and they had to increase a lot of them every 3 months or so. So he just kind of quipped that he had grown up a missionary's kid in Guatemala. And he said when native people would get sick around them and they'd offer them their pharmaceutical medications, he said most of the time the natives would turn it down and use herbs from the woods. And he said those herbs seem to work. He's like, so maybe there's a herb that could help you.
Wow, so he wasn't recommending them or using them himself. He just said, here's a last ditch idea.
Yeah, exactly. I saw this work for something, so maybe there's something for you there.
Huh. And then how did you then go start searching on the internet for herbs that might apply to your condition, or what did you do from there?
Yeah, so I didn't even know how to approach herbs or herbal medicine. I mean, I had seen the movie Medicine Man with Sean Connery when I was a kid. So I started looking up. I went to the library, and just quite an event for me for how disabled I was. And I'd go to the library and just started searching for basically ethnobotany reports and books on ethnobotany, looking for anything with the keyword pain. So any kind of herb that said it was used for pain. And looking back now, that's quite a broad search term.
Right. Did you have some success then?
Yeah, so I would find something where they referenced, and they would reference an herb and list all the ailments that natives were using it for. And so I started trying the herbs in the reports. And so I knew just enough about kind of different stuff to know that maybe there were different qualities of herbs. So I would buy one brand when I found it of a company selling an herb and try it for 2 weeks. And if I didn't notice anything, I would try another brand of the same herb for 2 weeks. And then I would go back to reading about herbs for pain again and try something else. So I tried 3 different herbs. And the third one basically made my fibromyalgia go away. It brought me to about 70% back to normalcy.
What was the name of that?
Yes, it was Pau D'arco was the herb. It's a tree bark from Brazil, and it is definitely not thought of as a pain herb.
Hmm. Interesting. You mentioned the term ethnobotany, that you were looking at books of ethnobotany. What does that term mean exactly?
Yeah, so it's the study of native groups' uses of plants. It's
Hmm.
not just medicinal. It could be the plant they use to build their houses, or it could be the plant they use to make clothing, or a plant they use medicinally.
And when you found the third herb that had an effect on you, how long did it take to notice an effect? What exactly did it do?
Yeah, so in about a week, I started to notice that I was starting to regain my alertness. I felt rotten all the time. And so I was starting to feel better. I could just feel different. I could feel my pain levels going down. And so about 2 weeks in, I just felt dramatically better. And I felt really wonky when I was taking the medicines I had been taking. So I slowly started discontinuing the medications. I'd read about them, and I knew which ones I could take that weren't addictive, like that you didn't attenuate to. So I would discontinue those medications and then see how that felt. And I was able to get off most of them safely doing that. And then I started, the pain was low enough that I started doing my own step down plan on the narcotic pain medication because you can't just stop that cold turkey.
Well, so you were bedridden up to this point, basically, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I could get around, but it was very slow. And I mean, I walked with a cane and, I'd be like a step or two every 10 or 20 seconds. So I was very, very slow, just intense pain and fatigue and all the different things that go along with fibromyalgia and neuropathy.
And then how long till you were able to walk and get your energy back?
Yeah, so that within that 2 weeks of drinking that herb tea, I started feeling energy back.
Wow.
Now I still had some fatigue, but it was just like a world of difference. I mean, I'm roughly guessing when I say I was about 70% back to normal. My hands and feet were still numb and on fire, so that's its own special kind of hell. It's very intense, neuropathy is. But all the fibromyalgia stuff, crunchy muscles, just like swollen joints, pain, grogginess, all the things that come along with that hormone dysregulation element, all those things felt better.
And that herb, what was the name of it again?
Yeah, Pau D'arco. It's a tree bark from Brazil. It's research. There's some good research out of Japan on using it for cancer. So has some immune boosting, immunomodulating effects. And then it also has a history of use for like fungal overgrowth and different immune components and infections and stuff like that. So not a pain herb. It still feels like a miracle that I tried that one.
Wow. And is that something you still take to this day, or did it resolve the issue?
No, I do not take it to this day. It resolved the issue, and then came the hard work of learning different lifestyle changes and eating different and getting my body back into shape and things like that to maintain health. So I had a few flare-ups where the fibromyalgia mildly came back over the years, and I would drink the tea for like a month, and it would go I'd go back to feeling good again, and then I would discontinue the tea.
Great. So that was the first inkling or awakening of an interest in plants for you.
Oh yeah, I was obsessed.
Wow.
At that point, I had to learn more. I got every single book I could that was remotely about herbs from the local library. I was reading online about it. And that was where I started to hit a wall because I realized it wasn't as simple as a drug. You can't read about the pharmacological pathway. You can't read about exactly how it works and what we know. And a lot of it was history of use or some experiential data. And then there's a lot of well-intentioned folks talking about herbs, but maybe it's not exactly accurate, or it's just in different terms that didn't mean anything to me. So I started to hit a wall with learning anything about herbs, and I realized I was going to have to go somewhere to study herbs.
So that led you to Bestir University. What is it about that particular program?
Yeah, so Bestir, they offered the only accredited Bachelor's of Science program studying herbs. It's called Herbal Sciences. It's a multidisciplinary study of herbal medicine. They train you to be an herbalist as well as to assess research that's done on herbs, because there's a lot of bad research as well as a lot of good. And then they also, I learned to perform research there, learn basic anatomy and chemistry and different things like that there. So when I was searching for a program, that was one of the only things that came up that was a bachelor's level program. And so I didn't know any other route to study something other than the university route. Now I know of lots of certificate programs. I know of lots of herbalists you could go study with and train with, but that wasn't my world then. So
great. What year was it that you graduated?
I graduated from there in 2011.
I was reading on your website, and I didn't know this, that in 2015 you took a 650-mile canoe trip down the Alabama Scenic River Trail to catalog medicinal plants. Now that sounds amazing, so I wanted to hear more about that.
Yeah. So I was working in research for maybe 4 or 5 years before that, or probably about 4 years. And I love plant research, and it was very gratifying, but I was just getting a little burnt out of working in windowless research rooms. So one night I sent a bunch of letters to canoe companies, and I love canoeing and camping and stuff like that. So I sent a bunch of letters to canoe companies telling them I wanted to do this trip and asking for a canoe. And so one of the companies offered me a free canoe. Old Town Canoe offered me a canoe, except they said I had to write for their adventure team blog. So I was like, okay. So I wrote a bunch more letters. I ended up getting 9 corporate sponsors, and I quit my 2 research jobs at the university. And I went and did this 2-month trip and brought along a bunch of plant presses and all my food and stuff in a 16-foot canoe. And it was great. I just was pressing plants, keying them out, identifying them. I did a lot of research later when I got off the river about their ethnobotanical use and their medicinal uses. It was a very fun trip. Very exhausting, though.
Wow. It reminds me of the way science was done, in the 1800s, and previously it was mostly about explorers going out and cataloging the different plants and animals. You don't hear about much of that today, do you?
You don't. Yeah. It seems like that form of research is dying out, or I don't know if it's just less popular, or I don't know what the reason is. It's definitely a style that I enjoy.
Right. It definitely sounds like it would be more enjoyable. How is the type of research done in an office when you're working on plants there? What sort of things do you do to analyze them, and what do you hope to learn?
So I was working on 2 specific research projects for my research mentor, and in Seattle, Dr. Leanna Standish. And so I was working on a breast cancer study. She's an oncologist as well as a researcher. So she had this huge study funded by the National Institute of Health. And I was basically reading medical charts. I had several thousand medical charts. I go through them and pull out data points on their treatment plans, their health progress, and size of their tumors, and all the different things, and enter it into a big database. And then they would do a comparison of all the data points of naturopathic oncology versus the MD standard of care.
What did you find doing that? What did you discover?
Well, she did a lot of data analysis. So I was kind of doing grunt work on that one, although it was enjoyable. I got to learn a lot. But she published, like 15 or 16 papers on that work from the data analysis. And the most impressive aspect I can remember was the stage 4 cohorts, the matched cases of stage 4 breast cancer. I think it was either 18 or 20% increase in, it was a decrease in recurrence for that group. So that's pretty impressive results when using herbs along with the MD standard of care.
Nice. So it was a combination program. It wasn't strictly herbs.
Well, we did a comparison. So I would pull data points from the MD patients who only used chemo and radiation and surgery and anti-estrogen drugs, And then we'd compare those data points to cases that were matched pretty exactly by their diagnosis and types of cancer to the patients she was treating. And so those patients were also getting the MD standard of care, but on top of that, they were getting complementary care. Mm-hmm. So that decreased rate of recurrence, which is one of many conclusions she drew, was from using the botanical medicine and supplements on top of the MD care.
Uh-huh. There's definitely a strong bias against natural medicine in the culture, especially when it comes to cancer. I hear a lot of this. Where do you think that idea comes from, that medicines derived from plants and herbs are ineffective compared to pharmaceutical drugs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long going debate. I can't remember. I mean, you can read about in Roman times, there was two different camps of physicians, or I forget what they were calling themselves at that time. There were people who believed in using the raw herbs and people that believed in extracting and kind of fractionating. So like a rough, you could call it like a rough pharmaceutical extractions then. So it's a long ongoing debate.
And one thing I've only learned recently, and I think most people don't know, is that a lot of pharmaceutical drugs were inspired by plants. So they would send scientists to see what plants were being used by healers in traditional communities and then try to identify exactly what compound or molecule is doing the healing. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it's very accurate. I think, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I think it was like something, or I think it still is something like 60% of pharmaceutical drugs are derived from plants. So whether that be a pure compound from a plant or whether it be a compound that they then altered somehow chemically. So yeah, that's very accurate. And more they're synthesizing things too. That side continues to grow. So it may be less than 60% now. When I read that, it was probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that.
Wow. Do you think there's benefit in taking a whole plant or part of a plant versus a molecule or chemical replicated or extracted from a plant? Like, are there parts of the plant that we don't even necessarily know what the effect may be, but it can have a helpful or synergistic effect?
Absolutely, yeah. You can do a lot of research on these things, but some of the best research on this topic is just clinical outcomes or clinical data. And so there's lots of good studies showing that with some herbs, the single compound that has an action isn't so effective for that thing when given to a patient set. But when the whole extract of that plant is given, it's very effective. So a more recent example I can think of is berberine from Mahonia or Oregon grape. Berberine is, it modifies a blood sugar response in type 2 and somewhat in type 1 diabetes. But berberine by itself doesn't give such a great action like that. It does it a little, but not very strongly. But when you give it with the whole herb, which may only have some trace amounts of other alkaloids, because that's the primary alkaloid in that herb. But when it's given with the whole plant extract, it has a stronger effect.
Well, that's great.
And then for some herbs, you can fraction it to just a group of compounds. And then with some herbs, you can fraction all the way down to one single compound, and it's still effective. So it's really a case-by-case basis.
How do they determine what the alkaloids are in plants? I think you've done some work on this where you analyze a plant and determine what the components or alkaloids are. How is that even done? I picture some sort of machine you feed the plant into and the information comes out, but that's obviously not possible.
That's what they showed in that movie Medicine Man. I wish it were that easy. That would be awesome. So you make an extract, and then you usually extract it differently to get one fraction of it. So maybe you extract it with an acid to just get the alkaloid fraction. Or maybe there's several different things you can do to fraction to different compound groups, like just the carbohydrates or polysaccharide group, or just the saponin compounds. Anyways, you usually do that. And so that's called making an enriched extract. And then I like to use a mass spectrometer, HPLC, high pressure liquid chromatography with a mass spectrometer readout. But there's a ton of different chromatography methods for seeing all the different compounds in it. Now that machine readout, all it does is there's various ways it can look at it, but all it does is basically tell you what compound is in there. Then you have to match that compound fingerprint to a database. So if it's not been found before, like if it's a new chemical, then you're not going to be able to identify it very easily. Then you go into something called NMR. I think it's like nano magnetic resonance or something. But basically, you're resonating the molecule, and that starts to get above my pay grade. But that's how someone will spend, like, someone will do an entire master's project on one new chemical, and they'll be able to elicit the chemical structure from that research and then name the compound. So it's quite a thing. I got lucky when I was younger. When I was in college, I went on a herb walk with a local herbalist in North Alabama, and he showed me several different herbs. But he showed me one herb that was kind of a Cherokee herb that had kind of fallen out of common use, although it's seeing a resurgence in use now. But he gave me some, and I tried it, and I felt a great reaction from it. It was for fatigue, and it gave me a lot of energy. And so I got real excited about it. And so I went back to school and was trying to get the school to give me money to research it. But, being a young, bright-eyed student, they didn't want to do that. So I used my food loan money from that summer and paid to run some tests, and then ended up renting out an analytical chemistry lab at the University of Washington. And a professor there kind of guided me and helped me run a bunch of tests. And I was able to discover a medicinal alkaloid in it that they only knew existed in one plant in India, or that was the major medicinal source. So that was kind of cool. That's how I got into research originally.
Wow, yeah, that's exciting. What was this energy boosting plant?
Yeah, so the energy boosting plant is called Crossvine. It's pretty common plant in the southeast. It has orangish, reddish trumpet flowers on it. Not to be confused with another common trumpet plant called red trumpet creeper or a cowitch vine. So there's two somewhat looking similar flowers. But gardeners know crossvine. It's a really pretty plant to trellis and grow.
So are people now selling Crossvine? Is that something I can order off Amazon?
Yeah, you can totally find it. I don't know about Amazon. You can probably find it from some smaller herbalists on Etsy. And there was 2 herbalists teaching it at the time that I was doing research on it. And so their students were using it. And so more people are using it now because those 2 herbalists, and then an herbalist up in New Jersey, David Winston, he wrote about it in a book called Adaptogenic Herbs. So yeah, he discussed it in there a little bit because he's Cherokee.
Great. I didn't know that people could sell herbal extracts on Etsy. That's interesting.
Yeah, you can. Some herbalists sell some tinctures on there, like small batch.
Are there any like FDA rules or regulations you have to follow to do that, or can anyone make them and sell them?
Yeah, you have to. It's some basic rules, like you have to assign lot numbers. You have to track. You have to just keep written records of the plant and keep plant specimens and different things like that.
Well, I want to talk about your CBD pain cream. I actually coincidentally used it last night.
Oh, did you?
We've just gotten a new dog, and I have to jog to keep up with her. And since I haven't run much before in my life, my shins were getting pretty sore. So I remembered, I've got Trevor's pain cream here, and put it on, and it definitely helps. It also smells really good, and I'm almost tempted to taste it. It smells so good.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that predominant smell is sweet birch bark, which is kind of earthy and smells like wintergreen because of some shared compounds with wintergreen.
Right. It smells a little like the store-bought pain creams, like Icy Hot or whatnot, but
yeah.
But it's not greasy.
Those
It's not greasy like this.
yeah. Those mostly have menthol crystals in them, and so they kind of give you that hot and cold feeling on your skin.
Uh-huh.
And then the methyl salicylates are actually related to aspirin. So the compounds that you're smelling in mine, it's like a topical aspirin basically. It's a non-acetylated aspirin.
I have heard that, now that you mention it, that birch bark was the source for aspirin. Is that right?
Yeah, birch bark or willow. There's a couple different stories on the origin because they have the same compound. But yeah.
I think I heard a few years ago that people don't even know how aspirin works.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure. I believe they know it's a nociceptive, meaning like dulls the your mind's, I don't know if the right word would be acceptance of the pain or recognition of the pain, but I'm not positive on the pathway for it.
So with your pain cream, and it's available online at clarksherbs.com, how did you determine what ingredients to put in it?
Yeah, so, well, I study herbs, and so I work with a lot of different plants. And so that was a formula I had been using with clients for several years. Some of those in there, some of them not. And so basically I formulate based on the action. So like the yarrow in there, the thing that gives it its blue color, the yarrow oil, it's a very strong topical, for lack of a better term, basically a topical narcotic. It really numbs and dulls the pain. You can actually read about, they talk about yarrow being used that way in the Iliad.
Wow.
He packs a spear wound with yarrow because the leaf stops bleeding, and then the essential oils in the leaf, which are what's in the pain cream, they numb the pain.
Huh.
So that was a big lead in the formula, and I import that one from Bulgaria because theirs is stronger than the yarrow that grows here. And then the methyl salicylate is nice for like general muscle and joint pains. And then I get arnica wild harvested by a wild crafter and herbalist out in the Cascade Mountains. He goes up and harvests it fresh because that herb decreases in its viability the longer it dries. So you got like a couple days to get it really fresh and strong. So he overnights it to me on ice, and I extract it and put it in there.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting that it takes a lot of care to get these ingredients.
Yeah. Definitely. I try to make the strongest medicine I can. Every little bit counts when you're dealing with pain, especially.
Any other special ingredients to that you want to mention?
There's the hemp in there. It's a nice pain reliever. I joke with people, but it's true that it's probably one of the weaker pain relieving herbs in there. But it does it is a good pain reliever, topically and internally. And then I have some kind of backup herbs in there to fill out the formula. I have the clary sage in there, which is used for mood a lot, but it does something with the serotonin system in the body. So that's an element of pain relief. And then what else is in there? Oh yeah, I have the copiaba balsam. It's got a really strong anti-inflammatory compound in it called beta-caryophyllene, and some essential oil. Yeah,
it's great. Definitely, it smells good. It's a really nice, creamy consistency. It goes on smooth, so it's terrific.
Yeah, I make it real nice and light. It's just like an almond oil and an aloe vera base I make from scratch. So,
how is it mixed up? Like, do you have a witch's cauldron that you stir these ingredients in, or?
Pain creams are actually a real pain in the butt to make. It's fun, like all herbal medicine making, but it's a difficult one. So you have to emulsify the oils. So it's kind of like you can think of making a vinaigrette dressing, or when you shake the oil and the vinegar together, how it kind of like makes kind of like a foamy, like Dijonnaise type mixture. So that's an emulsion. You're getting water and oil to hold together. I use a giant emulsion blender to whip it together, and then I have some things in there like beeswax and a little bit of lanolin and some things like that make it hold its form. And then as you're doing that at different temperature time points, you can add in your herbs, because certain herbs will break down at certain temperatures. So you got to constantly watch that.
Yeah, a lot of care goes into it, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And you also work with individual clients, I know. Do you make different tinctures and extracts for them, or?
I do, yeah. So I practice as a clinical herbalist as well. Clients will sign up with me. I'll take their medical history, and they'll bring me their medical charts and labs and all that. And then I will, after doing their intake and meeting with them, I'll make different formulas for them. So I might have, I don't know, a couple hundred different herb extracts on hand at my house. And then if I don't have the exact thing I need, then I'll either have someone else compound it that I know, or I'll find a commercially available product that meets the formula needs. And so I'll do all that with them, all the while making sure that it goes along with the MD treatment they're getting. So any medicines they may be on and all that, you got to look out for kind of interactions between the herbs and drugs. How
do people hire you for that service?
So it's largely been by word of mouth. I do see a pretty good bit of clients doing that, but people also find me through my website, just the Clark's Herbs website.
Or on Facebook.
Yep.
Should I include your Facebook page address in the notes for this?
Yeah, that's okay. You can do that for sure.
Great. And because it's a big, timely issue right now, I also wanted to talk about COVID-19, because I know you caught it over the summer.
Yeah, I did. Yep. After we were super strict and careful about it, me and my family and all that, and then after, I guess it was in June, we decided, because we'd been so good about all our different protocols around it, we decided it was okay to meet up, and then we all got it. So we kind of had like a family reunion at my parents' house, and then we all got sick.
Wow. The uninvited guest to the family reunion.
Uninvited guest, yeah. Oh, it was rough. Yeah. So I had the roughest time out of anyone because I'm type 1 diabetic and have a little bit weaker immune system. And I've also was a former tobacco smoker, so I guess I had a little bit weaker lungs too. So I went through all the horrible stuff over a 2-week period with the actual infection. And even at one point, my blood oxygen concentration fell to about 89%. I felt like I was gasping for air, and I had some, at that time, minor swelling in my lungs. But luckily, I had a herb on hand that boosts your oxygen levels, and pretty quickly. So it's Cordyceps mushrooms. So I took that, and within about 10 minutes, I was back up around 96%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It worked quick. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Any other medicines besides the Cordyceps that you took?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different things to help decrease your chances of developing complications. You can take a lot of oral vitamin C, vitamin D. You can take 5,000 to 10,000 IU daily for that. Zinc. Some real basic things to help your immune system fight it. They don't have drastic actions on the actual infection, but they do help your body with the process. And then since then, I've dealt with long COVID, and I've had several clients now dealing with acute infections. And during my new clients' acute infections, I've learned to use niacin, the nicotinic acid form. And it's kind of amazing. Within 2 days or so, people's symptoms go away.
Wow.
So that's pretty impressive. I wish I had that when I had the actual infection.
Wow. Yeah. And I read your post about the niacin, and you had also told me about Cordyceps mushrooms. So I've got those on hand. Yeah. And I've also been taking them. I know they're good supplements in general. You don't even have to have COVID to take them. Niacin, I remember reading that helps with depression or helps boost your mood. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, it's used for several things like that. I don't recall offhand. I know it's used for high cholesterol. It lowers cholesterols. I know Paul Stamets, the mushroom guy, he uses niacin in a supplement stack that he believes helps with rewiring the brain. He recommends micro doses of psilocybin mushroom, along with niacin, along with lion's mane mushroom, which lion's mane is known for rehealing damaged nerve ending, and is also used for depression and anxiety. So,
wow, great. I know a lot of creative people are always suffering from anxiety and depression. I know it's something I've had to deal with. Do you have any other particular herbs and medicines you recommend for that?
Yeah. So here in the Southeast, where we both are, there's a wonderfully invasive tree from China we call it the Mimosa Tree here in the South.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah, it has the little pink wispy flowers that look like pom-poms. So in traditional Chinese medicine, I won't even attempt to pronounce the Chinese name of that tree as a medicine, but it translates to roughly like the tree of happiness or something like that. And it's used to boost serotonin production. So people use the flowers as well as the bark
Well, it's a beautiful tree.
Yeah, it's very beautiful, and lucky for us around here, it's invasive, so you can harvest a tree here, and you're not damaging the ecosystem. Then there's another good. There's several good depression herbs. Rhodiola is another good one. It's in the adaptogen family, which ginseng is also in the adaptogen family, but it modifies energy production. But rhodiola also has some effects on the serotonergic system. Not that that's the only thing to be thinking about with depression, but yeah, that's another great herb. St. John's wort has some good mild effects on depression. I hear it used a lot for SAD, seasonal affective disorder type depressions.
Yeah, I usually get that in the winter.
Yeah,
I think often because of being stuck more in the house, not being able to get out and walk in the sun as much.
right, exactly. Yeah, which is a good thing to point out about depression too, is that there's a lot more to deal with to treat your depression than just herbs and drugs, right?
Right.
You got to affect the situation and what's going on in your life and diet as well. I end up giving clients with depression, or end up giving a lot of clients fish oil because a lot of people don't have enough omega 3s and the correct ratio of omega 3s in their system.
Right. I was thinking how interesting it is that plants and humans share all these connections. The idea that eating a particular plant can affect your body in a particular way. It seems almost magical. Is that something you think about a lot or wonder about?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It does seem magical. It's very cool that they interact with us. Although the more botany you study, it sounds less magical and more defensive on the plant's part. But
That's interesting.
in botany, they'll talk. So they call basically anything outside of the basic necessary components for living for the plant. So outside of like sugars and carbohydrates and some basic things like that, they call them secondary metabolites or secondary compounds. So all the interesting compounds that affect mammals, all the medicinal compounds and psychedelic compounds and all those different things, those are secondary metabolites.
Uh-huh.
So it's hypothesized that plants, one reason they produce them is to discourage grazing or discourage animals from eating the plants. Another reason they might make them, like the antioxidants that plants make, one theory is that they produce those to protect the plants against sunlight, against the oxidative stress of sun.
Oh, wow.
And then there's various other reasons they suspect that plants make these things, these delightful compounds that we love.
And of course, plants are cousins of ours, right? We go back to a common ancestor. And I think with fungi, that ancestor is even more ancient, correct?
Yeah, I forget exactly what it is, but I think genetically we're closer to fungi than we are to the plant kingdom.
Yeah, I wonder what effect that has, or as far as the way we interact with plants, because we are connected and related.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's definitely guided the way we interact with them, but I don't know. I think I think for a lot of people at this point, it might be a subconscious guidance because a lot of people are. It feels like a lot of people are more disconnected from plants. I mean, a lot of people are plant blind. They see green, they don't see the different plants unless they've studied them. And as you know, our lives don't revolve around plants, or the average person's life doesn't revolve around plants as much as they used to when we.
But yours does, right?
My daily life revolves around plants. So.
Yeah, it seems like so much has been lost, and a lot of knowledge has been lost too, as we're more disconnected from nature.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like catch-22 because it's good that we're protected from the elements and we're not all outside watching the weather, hoping that it's not going to kill our crops, thanks to technology and things like that, and division of labor, I guess, because there's still people that are watching all that stuff from the day to day. Thank God.
Right.
But with that separation and increase in technology, it's kind of disconnected a lot of people.
Uh-huh. I was reading recently how during the Middle Ages, a lot of witches were put to death, and it might have even been millions of women and their daughters especially were put to death in an attempt to stop the transfer of the knowledge of these medicinal plants. Have you read about that or wondered about how much knowledge was lost?
Yeah, I've read about it a little bit when I was studying herbal medicine history. Yeah, that is true. And I know more about maybe some of the English perspectives, like over in England. This nun, oh man, I'm going to mispronounce her name. Hildegard von Bingen.
Yes.
She was a famous nun, wrote a lot of music, wrote a lot of books and all that. But she was also a very talented herbalist and plant person. Back then you couldn't just talk about that stuff, especially as a woman, because you'd be a heretic. So she would say that God told her, or God has told me this, and she did it within the while being a nun, and so she's kind of protected from persecution. There's a really neat documentary about her.
It's interesting. I've not read about her story or heard that.
Yeah, I believe she was in the Middle Ages. Yeah, I don't know a lot about the persecution of witches, but I am familiar with a lot of them were working with plants and stuff like that. And so that knowledge is lost when they were murdered.
Yeah, interesting how plants were suspect in those times for religious reasons. And then today it seems knowledge of medicinal plants can be suspect for technological reasons.
Right. Yeah. The plants, interaction with plants is always suspect for some reason.
Well, I think that's a good spot to end it. It's been wonderful talking with you and getting all this knowledge. I know I'm going to go back and write down the names of several of the herbs you mentioned.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sam.
Thank you for listening to Living from the Soul. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review. The theme music was created by my son, Gideon Torode.